Are we live? Welcome, guys. Let's see if I can pop out the chat. And we're going to talk about whatever crazy stuff's happening, frankly. And we're also live on Twitch. Let me see if I can get this one out too. You know, one day I'll learn how to work my own software. Oh, sorry. I know the. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. It's multi-stream, multi-chat. There we go. Let's see, lads. Okay, I'm trying to get the chat up here. Okay. Title real BS. Nope, title real. Title real. Let's see. Okay. For some reason, excuse me, not seeing my stream chat. Huh. Hey, guys. Okay, well, that's cool. Yeah, it took some time to load. I'm actually still eating my lunch, so if I'm eating, I'm sorry. But, you know, welcome in. And boy, we are going to talk about, we got some wild stories. Is that one, yeah, the US seizing Russian Shadow Fleet tankers, which is insane. Not on my bingo card, certainly. And I think the administration is starting to realize that even if they don't want to be a global superpower, that's the country that they have inherited. And so they're going to have to start governing like one. And I think they're finally starting to realize what most other countries sort of implicitly knew, that the U.S. military, you know, $1 trillion of spend every year on the military gives us a lot of stuff, right? It makes you pretty powerful. And like, yeah, being the dominant player in the Southern Hemisphere, and like, don't kid yourself, in terms of economic output, we are, is like a rounding error. Just like beating Russia and Ukraine requires, like, we fought Russia to a standstill by contributing not 6% of our GDP, 6% of our defense budget, right? 92 cents goes to American soldiers, and 6 additional cents of every dollar goes to Ukrainians. And with that 6 cents of every dollar, they've literally stalled out the Russian army. So imagine what we could do contributing 12 cents of every dollar. So, yeah. He's slowly starting to learn that, in fact, yes, the U.S. is a global superpower for a reason. Interesting. You are scared of Russia if we are being 100. I mean, I'm scared of Russia, like, I was scared of Russia killing me in Ukraine, but they didn't. They failed. They tried. I'm scared they'll hack my channel again. That was pretty annoying. Huh. Trump is doing a decent job. Well, here's what I got to ask you. Did we regime change Venezuela? Like, is the regime replaced? No. Okay. Well, do we have access to Venezuelan oil? Well, unclear. But what is true is that the reason we didn't have access to it in the first place is because we sanctioned them. We did it. So if we want access to the oil, they would have happily sold it to us. Right? So then why did we take out Maduro? Why did we risk the lives of our troops? Right? To achieve what? I'm eating like one of those halal foods. Oh, sorry, that's not very specific. I'm eating like a. It's not Halal Brothers, but it's like one of those rice shawarma plates bowls. But it's from like a local place that is bizarrely really good. Why no troops if not scared? Well, because the Russians are losing, and all we do is give them money and our old equipment from the 80s. Right. I mean, you're like, made the man. Well, what we did is I don't think the Venezuelans are like the Venezuelan government relies actually on the United States and framing the U.S. as a big bad enemy. Like, and the thing is achieving those very limited objectives, which again, we haven't changed the regime. We haven't freed the Venezuelan people. We also, in the process, though, confirmed everything Maduro said about the United States. We literally proved them correct. Or not correct, but we played into his propaganda. You see what I mean? Whereas if we had just said, hey, what if we had just knocked on his door and been like, listen, dude, we're going to buy your oil. Your oil's sanctioned. We're not going to let it leave. But we will buy your oil. But you have to let in some of our companies. Okay. He'd cave. He'd be like, yeah. And you can have a licensing agreement. You can do like Brazil does, where you say, listen, 50-50 split, oil revenues, 50% go right into government coffers, right? 50%. The U.S. government isn't even going to get it. It would have gone to Chevron. So, again, why give him a propaganda victory when you could achieve the same things if you're not really concerned about freeing the Venezuelan people, which isn't happening, supporting the Venezuelan opposition, not happening, right? Keeping the regime completely, fully intact. Yeah, you also have a bunch of embarrassing shit about this stuff in court, where you're giving Maduro, again, a venue where he can, like, like, you may not be able to charge it. Like, what if you can't get the charges to stick, right? Like, what if you can't prove he was a cocaine trafficker? That's a problem. That's embarrassing for the United States. And again, does U.S. law even apply to the actions of a sovereign president, like a sitting head of state? Like, is he technically have diplomatic immunity? Like, is that codified into law? If he's still an official of the Venezuelan government, recognized or not, is he protected by diplomatic immunity? I don't know. I don't know either. Because remember, Saddam Hussein was never tried in the United States. That dude was tried in an Iraqi court. Again, my argument is not like, is it good that something bad happened to Maduro? Like, it is. But could we have achieved the same thing? Could we have achieved the same objectives more effectively using different tools? Yeah, U.S. greed for minerals and oil are just disgusting. Well, here's the funny thing, is that the U.S. is an oil exporter. So we, as a country, we don't really have an oil access problem. I mean, the Saudi Arabias and what we produce ourselves is like tremendous, you know, is more than enough to meet the country's needs. And so why do we need to unlock Venezuelan oil unless the goal, and also like oil right now is sub $60 a barrel. It's barely even worth it for American oil companies to pump it. Like, You know, why is this Venezuelan oil, like, it doesn't make any sense. It's not that badly needed. And the minerals thing, again, like, people are like, we need Greenland because we need their minerals. And it's like, guys, just ask to mine it. We have a trade agreement with the Dutch. It's fine. Like, just mine it and purchase it. Ask, like, the Dutch are a huge trading partner of the United States. They have the same free market economy the rest of us do. Right. Aquatic Borealis nails it, right? Just because something exists. Remember, Afghanistan, people love to say, oh, Afghanistan has $400 trillion of rare earth minerals. Yeah, but you got to get them out of a bunch of mountains, deep inside mountains, over the sketchiest dirt roads on planet Earth. Like, it's impossible. The restriction is not whether or not they exist. Lots of things exist, but you can't access them. Right? It's like being like, guys, the sun's always out there. Why don't we just build solar panels? It's like, well, because sometimes it's cloudy, sometimes the sun sets. Like, there's things in the way. Oh, the Danes are not Dutch. Oh, I'm sorry. Greenland is Danish. Right, Dutch are the Netherlands. I'm sorry. I mean, the Dutch are a great trading partner, but so are the Danes. Novo Nordisk, makers of Ozempic, based in Denmark. Yeah, that's the thing with Greenland. Ask yourself, what do we need? We have a ton of military bases. We were welcomed in Greenland to put military bases there. So what does conquering Greenland do other than fracture NATO for no reason? I actually think it's even stupider than that, because it's 30,000 people. There's hardly anyone there. It's not even about people or economy or resources. I think it's solely about Trump wants so badly to be known as a president that conquered something. It's really simple. Adding territory to the United States will be, in his mind, irrefutable proof that he, like, did something. I think it's that stupid. People are like, oh, that's really stupid. Listen, read the man's tweets and tell me if this is a deep, sophisticated geopolitical thinker, right? This dude isn't even playing checkers. He's not playing 3D chess. He's not playing 2D chess. He's not playing checkers. He's playing tic-tac-toe. Like, just read his tweets and tell me this is a man whose sophistication is tic-tac-toe. And he's literally living in, like, the Middle Ages. We're like, more territory, good. And it's like, dude, it's the information era. We're like, yeah, trying to leave his mark. Yeah. Literally on the map. That's why one of the first things he did was rename the Gulf of Trump the Gulf of America, you know? Like, it's leaving a mark. It's yeah. Exactly. The peace president, but invading a country and kidnapping its leader, right? It's very strange. And like we talked about, the fastest way to peace in Ukraine is to change Putin's calculus. Well, here's the problem. Like, there's a lot of what the administration does is performative. But after this Venezuela thing, like, I really did not think we were going to have Delta Force kidnap the president of Venezuela. I kind of was like, oh, these guys need each other, you know, as, like, enemies. But again, President Trump doesn't believe in, like, performative enemies, except inexplicably Zoran Mamdani. Actually, what I think happened with Mamdani is that Mamdani said the magic words, which is, I wanted to be just like you. Or he said things like, a lot of people are saying that I'm a mini Trump. I'm a populist. The establishment hates both of us. The right. A lot of people are saying that I looked at you for how to do it. And once he said that, I bet Trump was like, I love you. You're the best thing in the world. I love this guy. Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah. I mean, the whole war for oil thing is such a joke. I mean, look at this chart. Just look at this chart. This isn't even like video stuff. This is top 5 countries petroleum imports. So, right, 1, we export millions of barrels per day more. We export 1 million barrels a day more than we import. So and the stuff we do import, the crude, half of it is from Canada. Basically, Canada and Mexico account for 60% of it. Venezuela is not even on there. But we have our staunch allies, Saudi Arabia, giving us 5%, Iraq, 4%, and Brazil, 3%. Top 5 destination countries of U.S. petroleum exports. Oh, yeah, that's right. We export processed or refined stuff to Mexico, China, the Netherlands, Canada, Japan. So, like, does this math look like the chart of a country who, like, desperately needs a resource war? It was like, we need cheaper oil. My brother in Christ, we're giving it away as it is. You know, Ryan Macbeth, ever since he signed the even before he signed the contract with Newsmax, he had an agenda, and then Newsmax gave him a bunch of money, and now he really has an agenda. I don't know what else to tell you, right? I mean, listen, Russia tried to do the same thing with Tenet Media, get these content creators that were actually already kind of aligned to, like, be in the tent, you know, on payroll. Yeah. But, you know, that said, I have to do this for my garage. And I drive a Toyota. You know, it'd be dope to be, like, living in a mansion, driving a Lamborghini. I mean, that'd be cool. All I would have to do is sell my values out to Russia. I mean, Newsmax is not that mainstream. Ryan Macbeth does so much spin work. I think it's you know, he's got to be careful. He'll get dizzy. He should sit down. I also came back from a run, so I gotta, you know, what's the word I want? Electrolyte, rehydrate. Oh yeah, Newsmax and UFOs. Though, to be fair, okay, the drone thing, I get it. The drone thing was real, by the way, right? Now, was all of it real? I don't know. Let me see. Sorry, Poff has a question. Whoa, always Reason. Thanks for the upgrade, dude. We'll definitely make sure to get you a login to Combat Vet News. Let's see. We're trying to figure out this streaming thing, this bit rate. Let's see. Yeah. Greetings from snowy Kharkiv. Man, I am so glad I am back from Kharkiv. And I missed the snow. It was already pretty cold. You know, it's funny, but, you know, like when people are like, oh, Trump's bluffing, but that's what they said about the regime change. In fact, Marco Rubio was like, regime change isn't the goal. And then they literally just like kidnapped the president. So I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing, man. China, a lot of people don't appreciate. China has a lot of vulnerabilities. Like they're like, oh, China can make things, but like China needs a shitload of oil that it doesn't have, a shitload of concrete, and there is a tiny number of ways it can get those things. Tiny number of ways. Thanks, guys. Thanks for becoming sponsors. Appreciate you. Oh, interesting. Did somebody do like I see a bunch of these just became a sponsor through Stream Elements. Did you guys? Oh yeah, free membership. Hell yeah. Hell yeah, guys. Thank you for the free memberships. That is sick. Wait, but let me see. I cannot wait. Let me see. I'm trying to find who actually just did the membership, the gifted memberships. China needs like core building materials. Concrete, steel. I mean, steel it can make, but like the raw inputs, right? It's very hard to deal with the loss of raw inputs, or to deal with the fact that you don't have raw inputs. Plus, China has the huge demographic issue, which it can kind of solve, but only through a Russia-style conscription, not conscription program, you know? Okay, let's see. There's a live studio. Okay, there we go. I'm in live studio again. Okay. So you pop out chat. Okay, I want to make sure I can thank whoever's out here doing all those gifted memberships, man. That's badass. Okay. Upgraded. Oh, always reason. Thank you. Thank you for the 10 gifted memberships. That's sick, dude. Yeah, again, I'm like Trump gobbling up oil. I was like not. I'm like, oh, okay. I appreciate the like rare earths and being like, okay, there's some core things that we really need to do. But and to be like, okay, like establishing control over some key choke points that we can use to lever China. I'm not against it. I'm really not. But the secret is that the U.S. has to like the general strategy to isolate potential enemies. One, just like a cancer, the longer you wait, the harder it gets to beat. So you want to beat it early, right? As we saw with the USSR, it took us 80 years to beat them after they took over half of Europe because we just sort of let them do it, right? So we should probably not let that happen again. We should probably stop these big economic powers before they become massive threats. But then you also do it by having a big network of allies. And even if they don't materially fight in, say, a Taiwan conflict, just saying, hey, OPEC, you guys all have to agree to sanction China. I need you guys all to buy in and not sell China enough oil to fuel their war economy, right? Or you got to get everybody together and be like, listen, stop selling China these key raw materials to make processors, right? And if you have a large number of countries who view you as a friend and view you as a benefactor, they're going to say yes, right? And it gets harder over time because we burned a lot of credibility in Iraq for absolutely no reason. But now we say, listen, shared values. We're not an evil empire. This isn't who we are. China is these people. You don't want to live in a Chinese century. I promise you. We're trying to avoid that. Let's all just do a little bit and we can avoid this Chinese century. Okay? Exactly. When the U.S. is gimme, 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 and when the U.S. is like, this is our hemisphere, you're like, dude. Okay, Einjin Fair, if we take Trump at his word in regards to his goals, how could he do this successfully? Turn more famous versus infamous. Thank you for good content. Okay, Trump's own words about his goals. His goal is the Nobel Peace Prize. If that were his goal, he could do so by coercing Russia to view continued fighting in Ukraine as degrading his position, not advancing it. So he could, if his goal is the Nobel Peace Prize, which he's been seething about for months, yeah, he could. That's how he could get it. He could achieve his personal goal. I think it's because he believes he's dying. I mean, technically we are all dying, but I think he is much closer to death. And he believes that he literally, everyone who gets the Nobel Peace Prize gets into heaven based on a sort of bizarre, simplistic, like if you have a child's understanding, which he appears to operate with, that's, I think, his selfish calculus. And so he's like, I must have the Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, having him see that Norway, for not giving it to him, like the government awards the Peace Prize, like that's not how it works. It's like a committee that just happens to be based in Norway. It's like a child. It's like a child's understanding. Yeah. I mean, listen, you read the same tweets I do. There's almost no scenario where he isn't demented. And I mean, you're right. Like, it's very hard to get the Europeans to not buy Russian oil, and it's very annoying to see that, especially now. Again, in 2022, I get it. Oil was expensive. Inflation was really high. But now that's not the case. Oil's super cheap. And they've had, what, 3.5 years now to siphon off of oil? Some of the Europeans are, their governments are like very pro-Russian. Orban in Hungary, right? Again, this is sort of what I talk about. Like, you see, Viktor Orban, he likes Putin because they share a worldview about how a country should be run. They're both strongmen authoritarians. And you see that even without an explicit alliance or explicit support, you see that they sort of are fellow travelers. And just like if two people walk the Appalachian Trail long enough next to each other, they're going to end up becoming friendly or friends simply by walking the same path for long enough. And that's why I think you have the Orbans of the world. He's not like a Putin puppet, but he's just aligned with Putin because he goes, this guy I can deal with, right? And I think it's one of the reasons why when the U.S. does shit like this Maduro thing, it's not like I want good things to happen to Maduro. I'm just like, does this backfire? Do other countries that are economic powerhouses that share our values, are they going to go, oh, the U.S. and China are fighting, but, you know, they're both kind of assholes. Let them go at it. Like, look at the Iran-Iraq war, right? They said, they're both dictatorships. Fuck them. So you don't want the world, in the event of a real showdown, guys, to go, oh, American and the Chinese are fighting. Good riddance. I hope they kill each other. You know? Yeah. Listen, I never discount the Europeans' ability to do nothing, but okay. Should we talk about some stories? Should we talk about the main story here? Let's do it. Let's do it. Okay. All right. Let me check. Wait, I gotta think of a funny line. A good funny opener, you know? Huh. Story time. Staccato time. Yeah, exactly. The Europeans are gonna have meetings literally until the Russians are in their country. Except for the Poles. I have faith the Poles will get it together, but will the other Europeans do anything? Nah. They're like, oh, well, it's just a misunderstanding, guys. It's just a misunderstanding. Why don't we just have a frank conversation with Putin? It's actually like a pretty substantial problem in Germany. Let's see. What's a good funny opener for this? I'm not even that funny. This is the problem. We all secretly root for it when our buddy starts fighting with his toxic ex. We all are annoyed by her and her constant texting. Just break up already. Well, that's how we're feeling watching the Vladimir Putin-Donald Trump friendship fall apart. Just check out how bad things are going for the bromance of the 21st century. So here is a Venezuelan oil tanker that has been, of course, part of Russia's shadow fleet. Shadow fleet, for those of you guys that don't know, are Russian tankers purchased usually on the essentially scrap market, being used to transport oil illicitly with no insurance and no transponder, no marking, completely off the radar, with quasi-legal crews moving goods and services around the open ocean. And it's really not something that's supposed to happen. There's generally a maritime law that exists for a reason, because, well, if you have a leaky old oil tanker and it wrecks aground in Hawaii, well, guess what, guys? We're gonna have an oil spill and somebody's got to be on the hook for it. But Russia says we don't care about any of that. We just want to move our oil where we want it to go. And for basically 3 years, the United States policy has been, well, just let them do it, which doesn't really make a lot of sense, right? What good are sanctions if they're not enforced? Well, finally, and certainly Donald Trump wasn't in any hurry to enforce it. In fact, the only people enforcing those shadow fleet sanctions were the Ukrainians, and they were enforcing them using C4 by literally blowing them up. Well, now the U.S. has seized a Russian-flagged oil tanker that was being shadowed by a Russian submarine. Yeah. On Wednesday, after pursuing it for more than 2 weeks across the Atlantic as part of this effort to block Venezuelan oil exports. Now, we're going to talk about the explanation for this. That's actually like pretty troubling here in a minute. But the Mariana, which you might note was originally known as the Bella One, when it was actually a licensed vessel, it says had slipped through a U.S. maritime blockade. Again, this is a mischaracterization. The ship adopted a Russian flag of convenience, becoming a flagged Russian tanker. And, well, the U.S. administration went and said, you know what, guys, we're tired of this. We're going to seize this vessel. It says the blockade of sanctioned and illicit Venezuelan oil remains in full effect anywhere in the world. Now, this is fascinating because, again, it shouldn't be, because remember the administration like last week said that they had regime changed, that now there was a friendly, happy Venezuelan regime that was working with the West. So did we regime change them or not, guys? You got to decide. But also, the funny thing is that, well, it's only a sanction against Venezuelan oil. Russian oil, or sanctioned Russian oil, can move freely on any ships they want, which is hilarious. It'd be hilarious, rather, if it wasn't funding the Russian war machine. Now, officials said Russian military vessels were in the general vicinity of the operation, including a Russian submarine. It's unclear how close they were to the operation, but there was no clear connection between the vessels. Now, the French also reportedly seized one of the vessels last year. French Navy detained a tanker suspected of operating as a shadow fleet off the coast of France. But this is one of the things we talk about, the Blue Water Navy. This is one of those capabilities that really only the United States has, and that's the ability to monitor the globe for this illicit traffic and to pursue and seize tankers anywhere on Earth, right? This is literally in the middle of the Atlantic that we seized this thing. Now, a senior Russian lawmaker from Putin's puppet party, United Russia, said that the seizure was an act of outright piracy. Now, again, it may be a case of Russia just seething and coping and then taking it on the chin. And again, we're going to talk about for a minute, well, the broad insanity that is this administration non-policy. But I want to mention first, guys, you notice that I have some pretty controversial takes and that I don't work for anybody. I hardly ever get sponsors at this point. And more importantly, I'm speak truth to power, not on anyone's payroll, but yours, the audience. So if you want to support me at combatvetnews.com, you become a member, right? Specialist tier and above, you're going to get access to the members only videos. Twice a week, we look at uncensored combat footage. We do a weekly Q&A for lieutenant and colonel tier members, right? Plus you guys get the shout outs and the recognition. We really appreciate all you guys that do support me and enable me to do this. So you can go to combatvetnews.com. Link is in the description, or just tap that big giant become a member button on YouTube. Specialist tier and above will get you a login for Combat Vet News so you can watch all those videos. Now, I want to reference this, and this is a reference to Fiona Hill, who is a Russia expert who served in both the Trump and Obama administrations. This is a very senior official who is extremely experienced and she really has had some comments that she made during testimony in 2019, in which Russia reportedly offered the first Trump administration that the Kremlin would be willing to back off from its support of Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela in exchange for a free hand in Ukraine, which is fascinating because, well, Russia may have thought that they actually got that, maybe with Trump, right? The Russians repeatedly floated the idea of, quote, a very strange swap arrangement between Venezuela and Ukraine. Now, as we've pointed out, there's no need to conduct a swap. As the Trump administration has shown, militarily, it is absolutely capable of militarily dominating the entire Western Hemisphere, no doubt, and the administration, or at least targeting anywhere it needs to in the Western Hemisphere. That's what I'll give it. But we've also shown that economically, the U.S. maintains its status as an economic powerhouse in the Western Hemisphere. So the question is, what exactly is the swap here? What exactly is the trade? Russia doesn't have influence in Ukraine, and it really, we've proven, had no influence in Venezuela. Again, Hill says that Russia pushed the idea through articles in Russian media that reference the Monroe Doctrine. Weird. A 19th century principle in which the U.S. opposed European meddling in the Western Hemisphere and in return, an agreement to stay out of European affairs. Again, it was evoked by Trump to justify the U.S. intervention in Venezuela. That is so weird to literally have that in 2019, Russia was pushing, but what about the Monroe Doctrine? Again, I point out that the U.S. military is like, we have everything we need from the Western Hemisphere and a robust amount of cooperation. And it's really just the reason the Monroe Doctrine existed in the 1800s was because of a fundamental difference in literally the way world economies worked. These were resource-first economies. And certainly resources aren't nothing, but the Monroe era was like mercantilism. And what you had was nothing like the modern free market trade world. And so applying it, I mean, listen, here's what you got to ask yourself. What do you think a medical textbook said in the era the Monroe Doctrine was written? It would have told you things probably about the humors. It would have had no understanding of infection, right? Remember, it was the 1880s before there was a really established germ theory. So you wouldn't have even had an understanding of germs or infections as a concept. So I say that because if you wouldn't let yourself or your kids or your mom get treatment from a doctor operating with an 1800s worldview, why do you think a president or an administration should operate with the same 1880s worldview, right? Again, in the Monroe's era, the U.S. was an emerging regional power. And now, of course, we look around and we say, well, now we're a global economic and military superpower. And if you're a superpower, guys, FYI, the way you stay in power, as we learned during the Cold War, is to contain your enemies and to expand your allies. So you water your own garden, right? You grow your allies to be strong and powerful economically and militarily. And you also continue to diminish anyone who could rise to the level of another global superpower. And so this idea that we suddenly retreat back and we just watch from a distance as China and Russia try to reassert themselves. I mean, FYI, guys, the Cold War, defeating the USSR in the Cold War, that was a lot of work. The US spent a lot of money, 6 to 9% of its GDP on defense spending to get to defeat the Soviet Union, who, to be clear, was an enemy of the United States by their very state policy. And so this idea that we're going to just yield the floor to Russia and China is, well, there's a reason why Russia pushes it. Because militarily, Russia is substantially more powerful than Europe, right? And again, Hill's exact words were, before there was a hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, how about doing a deal? But nobody in the US was interested in 2019. Trump dispatched Hill, then his senior advisor on Russia and Europe, to Moscow in April 2019 to deliver that message. She told Russian officials, quote, Ukraine and Venezuela are not related to each other. At that time, she said, the White House was aligned with allies recognizing the Venezuelan opposition leader. But, of course, the U.S. now has ousted Maduro and then claims to run Venezuela. It does not. And if it did, why would it need to sanction Venezuelan tankers of a country it itself is running? You see how this doesn't even make sense. And, right, she said, quote, the Kremlin would be thrilled with the idea that large countries like Russia and the United States and China get spheres of influence because, one, it proves might makes right, but that's always been the case. The difference is under the NATO era, there was so much might concentrated, economic and military, concentrated within the NATO alliance that had a general agreement about the way the world needed to go, that might still made right, but it's just like, it's like living in a place with the police forces. You know that the cops have generally more and better weapons than any individual, barring a few crazy people. But they have the ability to enforce a certain set of standards and norms that everybody agrees on, right? So even here in the United States, might makes right. Find out. Try to, slam into a cop car and then try to drive off. Find out if it's rules or force that keeps things in order, okay? But this is the key. The reason Russia and China are contained is because everybody else got together and said, listen, there's a way we do things. And now Trump says, yeah, that thing, it was always the U.S. gets to do whatever it wants, whatever they're doing. As she says, quote, we've just had a situation where the U.S. has taken over or at least decapitated the government of another country using fiction, a fictional claim about drug trafficking or whatever. And again, it makes it harder, sort of, for Kiev's allies to condemn Russia's designs on Ukraine as illegitimate because, well, the U.S. claim on Venezuela, it basically uses the same set of logic. In fact, Russia's claim is actually marginally stronger. Now, I want to point out that President Trump doesn't seem to understand the value of the NATO alliance, sort of. This is his latest tweet, and this is, again, one of it is difficult to actually tease out even a point of this tweet. I'm just going to read it and tell me if you can figure out what he's getting at, because God knows I can't. he says, remember, for all those big NATO fans, they were at 2% GDP. This is a reference, he means, to their military spending was required to be, as part of the NATO alliance, about 2% of their total GDP. And a lot of NATO countries fell below that, but were still members of NATO. And most weren't paying their bills. This is, again, a reference to the fact that you have to spend 2% of your GDP on military spending, to be a NATO member in good standing, and most weren't paying. Then he says, until I came along, the USA was, and actually, believe it or not, guys, this core point from the first Trump administration, I actually supported. Like, it's true. The United States cannot both contain China and contain Russia with just its own military. We need the military spending of our allies, and in Europe to focus on containing Russia with the US and its robust capabilities as a backstop. Completely agree with that. Again, people are like, you're a fucking Trump hater. No, dude, he was spot on. But now join me in the rest of this insanity. The USA was foolishly paying for them. Not exactly how it works. We regardless of how much they spend, again, they've raised their military spending, and so have we. Mostly the rise in U.S. military spending, and let's see if I can find this here, was related to the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. Here we go. Here's U.S. military spending as a percentage of GDP. I love this chart because here's 1970, here's 1980, here's 1990. Notice when we let Russia become a regional, a global superpower, this is how much shit we had to spend of our fucking economy to counter them. Like 8, 9. That's, by the way, guys, that is 9 cents of every single dollar produced in the United States, not tax revenues. This is all goods and services, right? Everything we made, every burger, every McDonald's burger, every fucking shitty car, all of it. 8 cents out of every dollar that we produced went to defense. Okay. And then, hey, what happened? Hey, we beat the Soviets, right? Here's Reagan ramping up military spending. And then what happened in the 90s? Oh, yeah, good job, guys. Well, we beat them. We won. Now we can just have a military that contains regional powers, like regional Russia and regional China. We're spending just 3% of our country on GDP, 3 cents out of every dollar we produce. And then here's the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, 4.9, still never close to the Cold War, not even close. And then look at us now. This is what we spend, 3.4, 3.3, right? So this idea that the US had to foot this massive bill to cover Europe is literally stupid. We footed a massive bill to cover our disastrous wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Literally, 50% of our military spending was just on that shit, okay? We didn't have to cover them. We have vastly reduced our military spending relative to the size of our economy. Vastly. Again, the analogy I always use is military spending as a percentage of GDP is like the bigger and more valuable your house, the more money you spend on security. Simple as that. So no, we weren't paying for them. And then he says, I respectfully got them to 5% GDP, right? They increased and they pay immediately. Okay, so he got them to 5%, that he increased, he argues, I increased their spending, their military spending to 5% of their GDP, and they pay immediately. I think that's a reference to them buying weapons. I'm not really sure. Everyone said it couldn't be done. No one said that. But it could, because above all else, they are my friends. We're going to let's address this right now. Trump did not do this. This was not a function of the Trump administration. As you can see, this is a chart of the number of allies meeting the 2% spending target. This is within NATO. Now, as you can see, when Trump took office the first time, 2017, that number was 3. And then it rose through his administration from 3 NATO countries meeting their 2% target to 8 NATO countries meeting their 2% target. Wow, so good. And then you notice that by the end of his term, actually, that number fell back down to 6 when he left office. But then what happened? What happened in 2022 that made countries choose to spend more? Suddenly, you started to see a ramp up. What caused this ramp up, pray tell? Could it be the Russian invasion of Ukraine? Aggression by their literal neighbor? Trump sits there and says, oh, this was my doing. But it's very clear from this chart. It is so clear that the Europeans are like, no, the literal Russian invasion of our neighbor is what caused this, right? Again, Trump ended his first term going from 3 countries, NATO countries, over 2% to 6, essentially. And then Biden took it from 6 to 18, but he didn't. Putin did. Again, I know it can be confusing for Donald Trump, who loves Putin, but in fact, they are separate people, right? He says, without my involvement, Russia would have all of Ukraine right now. Also not true. The Biden administration, the front line has barely changed from when Biden left office and Trump took office. So again, he's just taking credit for something Biden did, like completely insane. Remember, I also single-handedly ended 8 wars. Incorrect. The Thai and Cambodian war continues. And Norway, a NATO member, foolishly chose not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize, which is not his call. It's done by an independent committee. This is literally stupid. But that doesn't matter. Oh, okay. Whoa. Why'd you tweet it then? What does matter is that I have saved millions of lives. News to me. Russia and China have zero fear of NATO without the United States. Also correct. And I doubt NATO would be there for us if we really needed them. This is objectively false. NATO countries, in fact, the entirety of NATO authorized the mission to Afghanistan, where NATO countries deployed troops and fought and died with us. In fact, Georgia, a country that was petitioning for NATO membership at the time, 2008, sent their best combat brigade to Iraq to support the United States. And while they were in Iraq, Russia invaded their home. Okay. So again, one, NATO wouldn't be there for us if we needed them is not true. When we needed them, they absolutely showed up. Everyone is lucky that I rebuilt our military in my first term. Again, the data says otherwise. And also, did you rebuild it in your first term? Because here's 2016, 3.4, 3.3, 3.3, 3.4. Again, and then look, you can see 2020, 3.6. Okay, maybe, sort of. But I thought Pete Hegseth said the military was woke. They were promoted for DEI and stuff. Did he rebuild the military in his first term? Why is it in bad shape now? Somehow. And continue to do so. We will always be there for NATO, even if they won't be there for us. Whatever the fuck that means. The only nation that China and Russia fear and respect is the USA. Again, Russia does not appear to be afraid of the United States in any way, shape, or form. I just want to point that out. He continues war in Ukraine. He laughs at Putin. He laughs at Trump's efforts to broker whatever he calls whatever he's doing. He has zero respect for him. Like, show me, put in the comments what sign that Putin fears and respects Trump and his peace process. Like that he's worried. Show me the evidence that Vladimir Putin is really worried that he will offend Trump by not engaging in the peace process. He ramps up his strikes in Ukraine. He continues to cut undersea cables. He continues to have to send drones into Polish airspace. His fighters incur in NATO airspace. Like, why would he do those things if he was so afraid of President Trump? I'm just curious. Now, I want to just bring up 2 more pieces of data that are really important to this Venezuela thing. Because again, the US is like really, really, really locked in on this Venezuela, we own the hemisphere thing. And that is the notion that the United States is an oil, like we need the oil, okay? We need the resources. And one, as we've pointed out numerous times, we don't need the oil. Why? Because we don't get any oil. Here's the US oil imports, or total imports by country. We import mostly from Mexico, Canada, China, Germany, Japan, Vietnam. You know what? You got to ask yourself, where's the Southern Hemisphere in here? Why on earth is the United States saying, well, the Southern Hemisphere? Okay, our 2 neighbors, got it, Roger. And then literally the remaining trade that we do here in the United States it's not with where's Venezuela? Where's Brazil? Oh, 1.4%. Where's Argentina? Doesn't even appear on the chart. Literally, Iraq's out here. We're doing more trade with Iraq than we're doing with these other countries. Okay? When you ask U.S. oil imports, which, by the way, guys, we are a net exporter of petroleum products, you can see that, again, we already get everything we need from the Southern Hemisphere. We get 5% by our next largest contributor, Saudi Arabia, our tight ally, and Iraq, country that's also whatever functioning government, is giving us, like, what is this Southern Hemisphere thing? Why did we, as the United States, why is the Trump administration suddenly turning around and going, actually, guys, the Southern Hemisphere is all we need? The data is very clear. The U.S. is a global power because we have a global economy that requires good, robust relations, security, economic, diplomatic relations with the entire globe. So if you enjoy being in a robust, thriving economy, and you enjoy not being in a Brazil type economy, an Argentina type economy, then you probably want to make sure you maintain your status as a global power. Just some thoughts. Anyway, guys, thanks. GMAT Club, Henry Roosier, James Porsche, Paul, Peter Fucci, Lieutenant Tier members, and become a member yourselves. Thanks. Okay, sorry, that was a long one. That was a long one, guys, but I appreciate you. Huge thank you to Seven Dust. What's up with Machado's comic Joker mouth? Machado's comic Joker mouth. Oh, it's probably Mar-a-Lago face. And I say this only a little bit derisively. I think it's but it's actually the Mar-a-Lago face. And I'm calling it that, but it's just that it's just this stupid fashion to get the lip fillers and the Botox, and it's just so stupid. It's just so stupid. But they look hideous. That's why. That's why they look so fucking hideous. Philo, yeah, it's a lot cheaper to just buy the stuff you need than going to war for it. Ding, ding, ding. See, this is the way in which the economy is different. See, in the 1700s and 1800s, if you wanted silver, if you wanted timber, you had to physically go and get it. And you would have traders or other sort of state licensed commercial operations like mercantilism go in and perform the extraction and then bring it into your country, where the government would take some of it and more of it would be like traded. So some of it would go and build warships and the rest would kind of be traded and the traders would make their money. That was the mercantilist system, sort of. But nowadays, like, why conquer a country that's difficult and expensive and hard to do, when instead you just need to make an agreement with their government to get access to markets? That's the thing. As long as you have the right to buy something at the market price, that's all you need, right? Again, and that's one of the reasons why European countries aren't constantly going to war with each other anymore, is because they all agreed, listen, let's just make our shit and sell each other our shit. And then the Germans don't have to have a fucking meltdown over the fact that they can't get French wine and they invade the Alsace for the 18th time. The reason is they just said, listen, Germans go, I can get French wine whenever I fucking want. It costs me 3 euros more than German wine. It's really not a big deal. Okay? And so, like, that is the way to think about modern economies. It's access to markets. It's the ability to buy something for the market price. And if you deny an adversary that, like denying Russia the ability to buy certain things at the market price, it impedes their ability. And it's one of the tough things with sanctions, right? Is what you don't want to do, because remember, a buyer and seller both benefit from a transaction. You have to find ways to sanction somebody that hurts them without nuking you too. So again, that's one of the challenges with sanctioning a country like Russia, is a lot of European countries were like, well, we sell a lot of shit to Russia and Russia sells us a lot of oil. So they said, okay, well, why don't we do a carve out for this pipeline? Like we don't need to destroy, we don't need to drop the oil sales to zero, but why don't we drop them to a limited amount, enforce a price cap, and ba. Yeah. Stratfoa, thank you for becoming a member. Yeah, the key thing to understand here is, like, the fundamental thing that happened with this administration, is that the reason people are like, well, why are you such a hater? One, as pointed out, there are some policies that I actually support. Again, like, NATO needs to step up its spending, and it's unfortunate that Putin or Putin/Trump like encourage this. However, the reason is fundamentally they have a different different perspective of values, right? As we pointed out, they fundamentally believe that being an American, and they've said this, they said this explicitly. There's a tweet that's like, let's see, values. It's like patriotism, God, country, law and order. Yeah. So they literally believe things that are like fundamentally different than what I believe are actual American values, right? So yeah, you have their, like, this is our hemisphere. Again, one of the American values is we are defenders of freedom. We are defenders of other people's right to self-determination. And like, we just took a bet. We just took a flyer on the idea as a country that if you give people the right to choose their destiny, they will naturally want to align themselves with other people's who share that worldview, right? Like, and we took a bet, and boy, did that bet pay off. Lo and behold, democratically elected leaders tend to align in values, align in what they want to do. Now, oh man, there's so many of these stupid tweets. But, you know, when you have these like, the government has this administration rather has fundamentally different values. They're like, God, you know, they're like, oh, this is a country, right? Let's see if I can find it. I'm going to try to find it because there really are some unhinged takes here. I think it's from the State Department. But anyway, there's a tweet that's just like, this country's real values are like law and order, patriotism, and faith in God. And it's like, none of those things are true. None of those things are American values. And if you believe that, right, if you operate that way, which is to say Americans are a niche ethnicity, they're like kind of like an ethno-state, they subordination between to law and order, they're a religious, we have an explicit state religion. None of those things are the U.S. values. The U.S. was founded by saying, hey, we have core beliefs about individual liberties, freedom, rights, freedom of expression. Even if those things run afoul of the law doesn't supersede these fundamental humanist values. And so this idea that there's a fundamentally different like founding myth to our country is driving all of these policy decisions. It's driving their frame by which they see Ukraine, right? If you believe that all countries are just sort of flavors of ethno-state, then you look at the Ukraine-Russia war and you go, they're both just mad because they both want their different governments want to run this chunk of territory. And it's not like how can you not see a values difference? Again, the belief in alliances is fundamentally governed by this idea that, like, listen, we share these common values and we share this sort of worldview and we share this ideal and we collaborate because we have both cultural, economic, and military alignment in our concerns, in our worldview. And like, if there's no values overlap, there's no frame overlap to issues. And if there's no frame overlap to issues, they're going to make decisions that to me are insane. And I think that's fundamentally why people are like, oh, you're such a fucking hater. I'm like, yeah, I am a fucking hater. Like, and I'm not a hater because I don't like their shirt or he talks like a fucking idiot. Like, none of those things are why. They are because they have a fundamentally different frame of what it means to be an American, right? Like, I don't even have an analogy. Like, there's no other. Again, yeah, Russians are Northern Ukrainians. Yeah, Northern Ukrainian subgroup. I mean, tribalism isn't inconsistent with any economic model. It's consistent with a subsistence living economic model. And if you spent any time in Afghanistan, you would realize that like the tribe, the family, tribe, sub-tribe, nation paradigm, where they're all nested in concurrent values, is so broken and leads to such a primitive way of life. And I'm not saying that derisively. The Afghans have their values. They say, listen, we understand we're going to be sicker, we're going to be poorer, life is going to be harder, but they're like, we have a traditional way of living and a traditional frame, and we're going to stick to that. But Americans don't. And our frame is like fundamentally different. And it's the magic sauce. You can't just go to being like, we're just like every other Bronze Age empire. And again, I don't see things as you probably don't. I don't see things as like, well, I'm loyal to my family over my country. I'm loyal to like my, I don't even know what my tribe would be, like my extended family over my nation. I'm loyal to like my state over the country. I don't view it that way, right? Like the America that I care about is like it's nested in like my children, right? That I love more than anything in the world. They're Americans. And not only are they my flesh and blood, but they are also one day gonna get to vote and maybe serve in our country's military, maybe even be civil servants or politicians themselves that can, really work on behalf of regular people. That's an opportunity afforded to them. If we keep the country intact, right? Like what a tragedy it would be if my daughter grows up and goes, yeah, my dad, he was like a YouTuber and he was allowed to say all these things about the government and it was crazy. They just let you say anything back then, Like, wouldn't that be really sad to be like, wow, Dad, you could tweet anything? You go, yep, I could tweet at the president that he was a piece of shit and they couldn't touch me. Like, imagine your kids going like, whoa, that's incredible. I would never do that. I'd lose my job. I'd get my bank account closed, right? Wouldn't that break your heart? And you're like, okay, yeah, like the prosperity of the nation is the prosperity of like your children, And like, that's the frame. And again, that is the fundamental difference. Like, again, do I want, like, I don't know what else to tell. I can't give you more of an explanation than that. Sorry, that was like a long, pointless rant. I'm not sure where I was going with that. Yeah, let's see. Oh yeah, more. 7 Dust. I always gotta laugh at Mark Zuckerberg. Again, just I almost feel like I also have this like sort of idea that like at a certain point of wealth inequality in the era of mass media, democracy starts to like fail, right? And the reason I say that is because if you have Elon Musk money, like enough money to buy, say, Twitter, then, and you could be confident that if you own Twitter, you can put your thumb on the algorithm and reach enough voters to mobilize right-wing voters and demoralize or demonize potential left-wing voters that you can sway an election, then and the media landscape is so consolidated that persuading Elon Musk is as valuable as persuading like 100 million voters, 100 million regular Americans, then you don't have a democracy, right? The democracy has to serve Elon Musk. It's higher leverage. It's hard to persuade 100 million people. It's very easy to persuade a billionaire who's hooked on ketamine. And that's what I'm worried about. Again, Mark Zuckerberg has demonstrated that Facebook or Meta is absolutely willing to play really, really, is willing to abandon all values in the interest of money. They said so. They told this to China. Came out. They said, China, we will engage in all the censorship you want. We'll provide you all the data you want. We will absolutely build a way. We will do anything you want if we can get access to your market. And of course, China did what they always do, which is they say, yeah. Just send us all your documents and all your technical data. And then they fed it to a Chinese company and they go, oh, look at, wow, we built WeChat. Wow, incredible. It does everything Facebook does. Wow, we're so smart. How do we do this? How could this have happened? Oh, Chinese innovation. We're so smart. But, yeah, it's like, but if you live in a world where Mark Zuckerberg is this leverage point where you can lever all the fucking boomers in the world, then you don't need to persuade all of them. You just need to persuade Mark Zuckerberg or something. And so if you can persuade Zuck and Elon Musk of anything, any half-baked idea, and trust me, the easiest way to persuade a billionaire of something is to offer them a lot of money. If it's true, suddenly they'll believe it. Then you very easily can leverage that into persuading the next 100 million voters. Oddish, yeah, okay. Oddish pointing out Commodore Matthew Perry forcibly opening up Japan, like for America. You've ignored the hard, dirty deeds. Yeah, totally agree. But here's the thing, guys. Like, I want you to just. I'm not like history didn't happen. I'm not one of those people. But, like, what you can do is sit there and go, hey, in the last, let's use the last 50 years. Yeah, we got here. But like, is that a good set of values to operate from going forward? And what got us here over the last 50 years? You know? Like, because the America of Commodore Perry's era was, again, a pre-industrial, like resource-driven country that didn't even control its entire own continent, if I remember correctly. And like it was literally a different country. Also, it was operating under a constitution that had not yet had a whole bunch of amendments. They weren't directly electing senators. There was no women's suffrage at the time he did it. And so sitting there and going, oh yeah, well that America and this America, like there's a through line, like history is real and it impacts things today. But you can't sit there and be like, oh, well, okay, you say, it's like, I'm trying to think of a good analogy here. Like, well, Paul, you say it's okay to have a drink, but when you were 7, you said drinking was bad and you never drank. I'm like, yeah, because I was 7, dude. Like, of course. It's actually not. Believe it or not, the data shows now that even minor amounts of alcohol have a statistically significant increase in your dementia risk and all-cause mortality. Okay. You want to talk about Russians going after gamers? Fuck yeah. All right. You know, I'm starting to long for the days when the average gamer, the worst they got into was just a crypto scam or a community that made some weird memes that the rest of us never really understood. But the latest info coming out of Russia says that actually your favorite Discord server might literally be recruiting you to go die in Ukraine. Check this one out. And by the way, it's not even the weirdest thing that Russia has its young people up to this week. Okay, so Russia is, no kidding, using Discord. That is the gaming chat app targeting South African gamers to recruit them for its war in Ukraine, with some volunteers reportedly getting killed just a few weeks after signing a military contract. Actually, that's an incredibly long lifespan by Russian war standards. Russia has reportedly used the popular gaming communication platform Discord, citing documents found that the Russians recruited at least 2 South African men in their 20s who left the country in July 2024 after communicating with an individual on Discord while playing the military simulation game Arma 3. Just truly brilliant. Guys, you want to play Arma 3 for real? Like, okay, dude. A lot of people ended up in Iraq and Afghanistan by being like, yo, you want to play fucking Call of Duty for real? And they were like, fuck yeah. Of course, Discord banned in Russia itself, which is also fucking great. Now, the men were frequent Discord users. A person familiar with the recruitment said. Then, interestingly enough, they were approached by someone using the name @Dash. After meeting in Cape Town, the pair visited the Russian consulate and then traveled to Russia via the UAE. And then they met Dash in person and signed 1-year military contracts in St. Petersburg. Within weeks of completing basic training, one of the men was sent to the front line in Ukraine. Interesting, where he served as an assistant grenade launcher operator. Yikes. And he was killed in action within a month. Now, he last contacted his family October 6th. So that's probably actually when he died. So he probably lived even less time than that. Like, literally, if he signed his contract in early September, yeah, he was probably dead within just a few days. Whereabouts the second man remain unknown, missing in action, KIA. I think this is really fascinating, again, because this is a sign that Russia is getting both intensely desperate, recruiting, but also like running out of good ideas. I don't know what else to tell you. And again, Ukraine's ambassador to South Africa warned citizens were being tricked into fighting for Russia. And Russia generally, this is the population they target. These are likely individuals with internet connections, but these are probably not very sophisticated people. This is probably from the lowest economic strata or lower economic strata of South Africa. Probably guys in their 20s, intermittently employed, where the Russian ruble actually looks like a very lucrative payday. And I mean, you got to think that, you know, the South Africa, not a super stable country right now, not a great economy. And I think reportedly there are at least 17 South African men who've been recruited into this war. What I thought was funny is the ambassador said, quote, Africa has nothing to do with this war. She said, quote, seeing Africans fighting a colonial war against a free country is especially insane. Again, this is an accurate characterization of the war. Putin trying to literally colonize another free country. Interesting. Actually, the South African government admitted it gets a lot of calls from men trapped on the front lines in eastern Ukraine and Donbas, 20 to 39, lured by promises of lucrative contracts, though officials did not specify which side they were fighting for. Well, only one side has recruited foreign fighters with lucrative contracts this far. Kiev says, oh, this is funny. They were recruitedly sent to, quote, bogus bodyguard training. And fascinating that they were sent there by the party founded by the former president Jacob Zuma, who maintained close ties with Russia while in office. Right? This is just this. Normally I would say that this is as insane as it gets. Going after gamers, going after random South African dudes. This is not the actions of a country who's like thriving and winning the war, right? And to, again, see like the president of the United States be like, Russia's winning, guys. He has all the cards. Listen, if you have all the cards, you're not recruiting fucking Arma 3 gamers, okay? It's just not compatible. And the stats bear this out. Just yesterday, it was revealed that Russian losses vastly outstrip their recruitment abilities for the first time this month. That means that Russia is starting to lose troops deployed to Ukraine. So unless they can find a way to stabilize their economy, increase their recruitment budget, bring in foreign fighters, or suddenly wave a magic wand and manifest a bunch of military-aged men in the country, Russia is in for a long war. Or rather, potentially short war, just like going bankrupt. You go bankrupt a little and then all at once. But that's not even the dumbest shit they have the gamer class up to, because literally Chechnya now has a 20-year-old as the acting deputy prime minister. This was appointed by Chechen strongman Ramzan Kadyrov, who again appointed his 20-year-old son as the acting deputy PM. Now, I think this is interesting because he also promoted his 38-year-old Minister for National Policy, External Relations, Press and Information to the same post. One, it's always funny to see somebody who has like 15 job title roles, right? He's like the Marco Rubio. He does everything and he looks lost doing all of it. But what I think is funny is Kadyrov called them minor personnel changes, but this is on the wings of a rumor that Kadyrov is quite ill and hospitalized. Now, that's just a rumor, but again, you don't appoint your son to these kind of roles. And remember, Kadyrov himself is not an intelligent man, and he was appointed to the role by his father. So it's logical and assumed that his son is going to rise to this role, and he's likely trying to basically speed run his son through all the roles he needs to run the country. Of course, as we all know, a 20-year-old, there's a reason there's not that many 20-year-old speedrunners in video games. There's definitely, you're not going to be able to speedrun your way to being in charge of Chechnya, a republic with a lot of angry, and now militarily experienced fighters. So, again, I think it's funny. He's like, on the recommendation of the chairman of the government of the Chechen Republic, my son is acting deputy chairman of the government of the republic. Minister of the Chechen Republic for Physical Support and Culture. Just absolutely not even close to the craziest thing. Now, what I think is also funny, though, is that despite using like gaming apps and the internet to recruit so many people, Russia is actually banning the internet in its own country. In fact, in a lot of their regions, Russia is restricting mobile internet access, saying that, listen, it's because of Ukrainian drone attacks, but again, this region is over 9,000 kilometers from Ukraine's border. Instead, the theory is that actually this has to do with authorities shutting down mobile internet access to really stop Russians from getting access to real information. Kremlin, this would be a logical continuation of the Kremlin's control over the information space, right? We've talked about the fact that even secure messaging apps like Telegram and Signal are increasingly banned or disincentivized in Russia because it allows Russians to get uncomfortably candid information about the front lines. We've talked about the fact that a lot of Russian mill bloggers, not terribly different from me, make this content on Telegram, and a lot of Russians trust it much more than government licensed state media outlets. As a result, though, Russia, at first, they loved their mill bloggers because the mill bloggers supported the war. But increasingly, the mill bloggers, who are advocates for the rank and file military in a way that the Kremlin doesn't really like, the mill bloggers have been critical, pointing out instances of the Russian government lying to the public, pointing out the Russian government's high casualty, high attrition strategy of meat assaults, and generally criticizing the high-level leadership for their ignorance of the realities of the battlefield. And Russians, the average Russians, are increasingly learning about this. And it is very, very uncomfortable for the Kremlin because, again, as the war goes on, the 3-day special military operation drags into its 4th year and the casualties start to enter the 7-figure mark. You see that the Kremlin has no choice but to simply put a kibosh on these channels. But the problem is that the cat is in some ways already sort of out of the bag. So the Russian government has to like come up with all these convoluted schemes where they say, listen, we're going to make our own messaging app and it'll be sort of encrypted, like, except for us when we want to read it, which we can do anytime we want, called Max. And they actually drive Russians to use the app because they will only send you your pension payments, for example, over Max. You have all of these things. You combine it with the banning of YouTube and other social media, the fact that Discord itself is banned in the Russian Federation. And you end up with these situations where Russia needs to use these apps to recruit more people, but at the same time bans them for their own public. It would only be nonsense if you didn't understand the way Russia works. But again, it sounds increasingly like Russia is the model for at least the current White House, which, again, we're seeing Trump allies buy up more and more media. And, thanks to you guys that do support me, Sergey Zinchenko, Thomas Anderson, William Yank, Georgiev, L90, all the members of Combat Vet News. Again, you guys are the ones who keep me independent and keep me in operation. Check the link in the description to sign up, become a member, or hit the big old membership button on YouTube. Thanks. Okay, guys. Whoa, that was a long one. That was way longer than I thought, actually. This whole thing has been longer. Yeah, it's funny. People there are tons of Russians. Well, are they Russian or are they Belarusian? Because they could be Belarusian. They could just be using VPNs. Okay, if you guys are in the kernel tier list, I don't see it. We are updating it this week. So send an email to Dan or to Poff, and he'll get it to you. He'll make sure you're on there in this updated one. Okay, guys, I got a lot of other stuff to do today, but I really appreciate you joining me for the stream. This has been a great stream. I mean, as always, I enjoy streaming so much, and I enjoy talking to you guys. I enjoy connecting. If you have any final questions, just let me know. And yeah, people are like, what frame rate am I uploading? I think it's like in the 30s. We're gonna figure it out. There's something going on, but we'll get to the bottom of it. Anyway, guys, I appreciate you.